I love decorating cakes, and I have since I was quite small. But I've always felt if you're going to take the time and trouble to decorate your own cake, it's worth making it a bit special, a bit personal, and perhaps even a bit of fun. And if, like me, you're not a professional, there are lots of ways of cutting corners and creating effects without too much time and effort. So I'll show you lots of different techniques that you can use. And the main thing is that you enjoy it. This silly cake is one of my favourites. I don't know how glamorous you look in the bath, but I tend to look rather like this when I get my bath cap on. And I particularly like the way that the water in the bath is made from water icing, just a pleasing verbal pun. For this cake decoration, you'll need 1 loaf tin cake. That is 1 basic quantity of fruit cake baked in a 6 by 10 inch loaf tin. 4 packets, or 1 kilogram or 2 pounds of sugar paste, 250 grams or 8 ounces of icing sugar, about 3 tablespoons of warm water, food colourings, white, pink, blue, silver and brown, a cocktail stick and some baking parchment. And you'll need a 10-inch cake board. Loaf tins have sloping sides, so the first thing I've got to do is make the sides nice and straight. Because I haven't seen a slopey bath, certainly mine isn't. Cut straight down each side. Keep all the bits of fruit cake because somebody will eat them up, you don't want to waste it. Make this side nice and straight. And this one. Like so. It is, I think, easier to do this cake with a fruit cake rather than a sponge because it cuts so well. And you want to have nice crisp sides for the bath. And when I scoop out the top, you'll see it really is easier if it's fruit cake, I think. I haven't tried it with a sponge. I mean, it might work, but it might be a bit crumbly. That's got the 4 sides nice and straight. The next step is to hollow out the bath in the middle. I think the easiest way to do this is to sort of crisscross with the knife. Mark roughly the shape you want it to be. I'm going to leave a bit more space one end to fit the taps in and all that. Just mark roughly the oval you think will look right, and then crisscross around it with a knife. And scoop bits out. Oh, this cake looks so good. And there's fruit. Don't go too deep, because you won't have much cake left then. Also, you'd need so much water icing to fill it that it would be a bit disgusting. You just want it to be deep enough to look as if it goes deep down, about ½ an inch to an inch down. That's nearly enough. And just give her a bit more space there to lie her head on. I'm going to finish off with a spoon, scooping out loose crumbs. Then I'll just smooth it down, press it in like that. And you can see that's really quite a nice bath shape already. I'll get rid of some of these crumbs before we move on to the next stage. I'm going to put it on this square board. You might be able to find a rectangular board which would be a more suitable shape, but they're quite difficult to find, and as you see I've filled in the space with a little pink bath mat, which I think is rather nice. So a square board is fine. Put it on the board, slightly to one side to allow room for your bath mat. And the next step is to put some icing on it. It's good old sugar paste. Take about 1/3 of it, maybe slightly less, 1/4 to 1/3 of the sugar paste. Knead it as usual. Dust the surface, of course, with the icing sugar. And with my rolling pin, roll out a shape that's long enough and wide enough to cover the top and a bit of the sides and to flop down into that hole in the top. I think that's going to be about big enough. paint the top of the cake with jam as usual. I wouldn't try and paint the inside because you'll just pick up so many crumbs and the icing will sit there quite happily. And I'm going to just paint the top of the sides because this doesn't need to go all the way down, because I'm making an old-fashioned sort of bath, you know, the kind with panels, which will be put on in a minute. Roll up the icing. Remember, that's the easiest way to move it. Unroll it over the top, like so. Before you sort of push it on too firmly, make a cut in the top so it'll fit down nicely into the bath, like this. Then you can press it down over the sides because you know you've got enough, like so. And again, I think I'll give it a little roll along the top to make it nice and flat. Now we need some sides, the side panels. Best way to do that is to measure, I think. So measure one side, which is about 7. I want it a bit short of the top so I can see the top of the bath, so I'll roll it to about 6 centimetres by 22, so 6 by 22. Take another bit of your sugar paste. Don't worry if you misjudge how much, because you can use the leftovers again for another side. Keep everything well dusted, won't you? Because it's so annoying if it sticks and tears when you pull it up. The best way to do these side panels, and what I normally do, is to measure them, cut them, and then let them dry flat for a while on baking parchment, because then when you put them up, they're nice and stiff and they stay lovely and straight. But I'll put this one straight on to show you, but it's best if you can let them dry a little bit in between. Now, what did I say? 7 by 22. So it's 7 that way by 22, 22 again there. I'm not going to measure that. I hope it's 7. If I've done it square, it should be. Now, as I just said, ideally leave that to dry for a bit so it's lovely and straight. But as I want to show you putting it on, I'll do it straight away. Let's put it on this side that we've measured. Paint the cake with some more jam to get it to stick. And paint just where it's going to come to, onto the icing there. And then just loosen it a bit to make sure it's a tiny bit stuck there. Not too bad. And press it onto the side. Now you see where it's stuck a bit. That was my fault for not putting enough icing sugar. But also, if you do have a little mistake like that, don't worry, because if you wet your fingers, it's amazing what you can smooth out with this sugar paste, and you really would get away with it. But that, you see, would look better if it was just a little bit harder and straighter, which it would be if I'd left it to dry. While that's drying, or while your panels are drying, if you like, before you put them on, think about modelling your person. With about, nearly all the sugar paste you've got left after doing your panels, so just keep a little bit back. Colour it a nice flesh colour. See, that's rather nice sort of fleshy colour. What you'll need to model is a head plus a neck, 2 hands with the forearms, shaped so they can drape over the edge of the bath, 1 bent knee, which will stick up out of the bath, and a foot. It's a rather strange looking foot. It could be a hand or a foot, but it is actually meant to be a foot. But don't worry if you're not a brilliant sculptor, just make an effect, an approximation. 2 little taps, which we'll paint eventually, and I've done a bar of soap, which is quite fun, and a sponge. When I model the head, it really isn't very difficult just to give an effect of a person. All I did was roll a round ball palm of my hand. Then make it slightly more oblong, like that. And I just sort of indented roughly where the eye sockets would be. I added a little nose and just sort of squidged it a bit. And you see, you get the rough idea of a person. By the time that's painted, you'd be surprised how lifelike it'll look. For the sponge, very satisfying to do and very easy. Colour a little scrap of your sugar paste, lovely bright yellow. Again, roll it into a ball. This is a bit dry, so I'm going to knead it a bit longer because I don't want it to look cracked. Like that. Take a cocktail stick and just make lots and lots of holes. There you are, just keep going. And when you've got lots and lots of holes, it does look very sponge-like, doesn't it? The soap, of course, is easy. Just colour a tiny little bit pink and make a sort of oblong shape. Now the next fun bit is, of course, to put the lady into the bath. Here's one where the side panels have dried, so it's ready to be assembled. The head and neck go this end. The hands, I'm not sure whether that's her right hand or left hand. I think I meant that to be her right hand. Drape those over the edge. You could stick these with a tiny bit of icing if you're worried about them staying there. Stick her foot somewhere up the end, and the knee of the other leg will be sticking up out of the water. Stick the taps, I'll do this with a little bit of icing, I think, just to make sure that they stay on. Stick the taps up the end. Move your foot out of the way, please, madam. There we are. But she does need painting. She looks a bit bare, doesn't she? I'll just show you the very beginnings of painting her, which is great fun. Let's give her nice blue eyes. Like that. And I've given my lady a little blue bath cap. I just coloured a little bit of sugar paste blue, cut out a circle, pressed it round her head. So let's imagine I've painted her, I've painted the taps with silver colouring, I've painted a little red and blue to show which is hot and cold. Now I'm going to put her water in, and this is terrific fun. To mix water icing, it's really incredibly simple. Icing sugar, about 3 tablespoons of water, and you just mix them together. And I've added a few drops of blue colouring to give it that slightly soapy look. There's my blue colouring here. Just mix it in. And keep mixing until it's really nice and smooth. See, it's going already. It's really so easy. Here's one that I mixed before. And stir it up because it's already beginning to harden a little bit on the top, on the surface. And the fun. We now fill her bath with water. Here we go. Just put enough to cover all the joins. Don't drown her. There she is, and I'll just show you the finished one, because this poor person looks really rather bald. Here's the one where I've painted the taps, and I've painted her face and given her a bath cap and a little pink mat, and she really does look as if she's enjoying her bath, doesn't she? This would be lovely perhaps for a summer birthday, or what about for somebody who's always busy? You could make the number of bees the age of the person, which would be quite fun. 6 bees for a 6-year-old, and so on. And for this cake decoration, you'll need 1 pudding basin cake. That is 1 3-egg mixture of basic sponge, baked in a 3-pint pudding basin. If you want to make it chocolate like mine, replace 1 ounce of the flour with 1 ounce of cocoa. 2 basic quantities of butter icing, 1 packet or 250 grams or 8 ounces of yellow marzipan, yellow and black food colouring, rice paper or leaf gelatin, and some thick florist's wire. And here's our chocolate pudding basin cake, all ready to be turned into a beehive. First thing to do is to cut a little entrance for the bees to fly in and out. You can make it as deep as you like, just so that it looks as if it would be going right into the hive. We might take out a little bit more so that it really looks as if it goes deep inside. There we are. I've fixed the cake board onto the turntable with a little bit of blue tack each side so that it doesn't wobble around. And here's the butter icing that I've coloured in a lovely yellow hive colour with a few drops of yellow food colouring mixed into the icing. Spread it all over the cake, not inside the entranceway. I think it's best to leave that plain because then it just looks like a dark hole going into the hive. So keep spreading until it's roughly covered, like the one that I did over here. Take off our blue tack. Move the cake. Here's one that's pretty much covered. But as you see, you don't have to do it beautifully, just so that it's more or less covered all the way over. Delicious butter icing. Stick the turntable again to the board so that it doesn't wobble around. A little bit of blue tack. And this is the fun bit, to make those lovely marks that beehives have with an ordinary meat skewer, starting at the top centre. Mark out quite deeply. You can actually press down so that you're touching the cake. As you see, I'm not using the turntable yet. I think this bit's easier to do just by hand. But now I'll start to turn the turntable. Again, if you haven't got a turntable, don't worry. You can do it just by walking round and round the cake. You might get a bit dizzy, but it'll work just as well. So keep the skewer pressed right against the cake and work your way downwards. If the skewer gets lots of icing on it, you can stop and wipe it off, but I don't think it'll be necessary. And don't worry if it's not exactly even, it's just, of course, to give an impression. After all, these cakes are meant to be fun, they're not meant to be hard work. Keep going further and further down. Until, when you hit the entranceway, of course, you have to stop and start again the other side. We've nearly reached the bottom. And then the next thing we're going to do is make the bees, which is great fun and really quite easy. There. That looks a bit more like a beehive. The bees are made out of marzipan. Knead it a bit, as usual, so that it's nice and pliable. Take quite a small piece, about that much. Move the hive slightly out of the way for the moment. Roll it in your hand, and then shape it into a sort of bee's body shape, which isn't really very straight, is it? It slightly bends in the middle like that. I'll put that down on the surface and make his little head. Tiny scrap of marzipan for the head. Roll it in your hand. Flatten it a bit, because bees, I think, have that sort of flat head. And you'll find it sticky enough to stay without any water or icing or anything. Just press it onto the front of your body shape. You see, that's already beginning to look a little bit like a bee. Let him dry for a while. Here are some I made a bit earlier, so they're quite dry. And then we're going to paint them, which is great fun. Black food colouring is the ideal, and you can now get it in lots of supermarkets or cake decorating shops. If you can't find black, don't worry, because dark brown would look almost as effective. Using just an ordinary paintbrush, get a good bit of black on your brush. Paint the whole of his head black. The children could help you do this, if you don't mind black colouring all over the kitchen. There's his black head, and then of course, nice bee stripes. Like so. It's funny stuff, this black colouring. You'll find it doesn't ever quite dry. I don't know whether it's very greasy or what, full of some sort of glycerin, but it doesn't ever completely dry. The brown does, so you may prefer to use the brown. This black stays slightly sticky. So people eating the bees, you may find, get a little bit of black colouring on them. So he's looking really like a bee, except for his wings. So he must have some wings. I'll put him down there to get a bit dry. I've used this wonderful stuff, leaf gelatin, which you can get in specialist cookery shops or some of the big department stores. See, it's this. It's absolutely ideal for bees' wings, or for making windows in houses, or all sorts of other things. If you can't get hold of it, don't worry, because rice paper would look almost as effective, and you can get that in stationers and all over the place. Just cut a nice wing shape out of the leaf gelatin. This, of course, is really for making jellies, and it does make delicious jelly. I think it tastes better than the powdered gelatin. It's quite stiff like this before you melt it down for the jelly, and if you cut a nice pointy shape, one end of the wing, you'll find that'll press into the marzipan bee without needing to be stuck or anything. Here's our bee all ready for his wings. Press a wing into one side. I've got another one already cut here, which we could use on his other side, like so. But you see, they don't show very well, the wings, do they? They're so transparent, you really can hardly see them. So what I shall do, to make them show up a bit better, is paint some little veins onto the wing, like this. I'm not quite sure if bees' wings do have veins, but it gives a good impression. I should do this even if you use the rice paper wings. It just helps them to show up. I think that'll do. He looks about ready to fly. So to make him fly onto our cake, you could just stick them straight onto the cake. That would look very effective, all clustered onto the cake. But if you want to have a bit of fun, make them fly around, find a local florist and ask for some quite thick florist's wire, because these bees are quite heavy. Stick the wire into the bee, like this. Then, of course, you can make them fly wherever you like. Let's put him flying down towards the hive. Just to remind you, I'll show you one where I've stuck a lot of bees into it. And it really does look quite busy, as you might say. This would be a lovely birthday cake for a 3-year-old, or for anyone who loves the story of Goldilocks and the 3 Bears. I suppose if you were feeling really ambitious, you could even make a big Goldilocks out of sugar paste, or some little bowls of porridge, or little chairs. You could really go wild with this one. But just the 3 of them lying in bed does look very sweet, doesn't it? And for this cake decoration, you'll need a 6-egg sponge mixture baked in a 10 by 12 inch roasting tin, 4 packets, or 1 kilogram, or 2 pounds of sugar paste, some sieved jam, food colourings of your choice, and a 15 by 12 inch piece of board, that is 38 by 30 centimetres. Once the cake's completely cool, as usual, turn it upside down and we'll use the underneath, which will be nice and flat. I've got to cut 3 beds. And of course, no feminism around here. We have to have a great big strong bed for Daddy Bear, a medium-sized bed for Mummy Bear, and a little baby bed for Baby Bear, or it wouldn't fit the story, would it? So just guessing this, I think Daddy's bed can be about that size. Looks like a good manly bed, doesn't it? Mummy's bed can be that much smaller. Think about that size. And baby's bed can be the smallest still, about that size. You've got 3 nice beds. Don't worry about all this leftover cake. We're going to use quite a bit of that for pillows and to make their bodies and things. But of course, if you have lots left over, then do keep it to put in trifles. It'd be delicious. I'll work on one bed because, of course, they're all exactly the same in principle. I'll show you how to cover the bed. I think I'll choose Mummy's bed and work on a sort of medium size to show you. So I'll put aside Daddy's bed and Baby's bed. Just clear the crumbs away. I don't want crumbs in the sugar paste. First, I'm just going to put an undersheet over the top of the bed. You don't need to put it all over because it won't show. Take a small quantity of the sugar paste. See, I'm keeping it in polythene as usual so it doesn't dry out. About that much should be plenty. Knead it so it's nice and soft. Dust the surface with icing sugar as usual. And the rolling pin. Roll it out into a rectangular shape. Just enough to cover the top third, roughly, of the bed. That should be plenty. Paint the bit you want to cover with the jam so that it sticks. You could always split this and put butter icing in the middle if you think there's rather a lot of cake. This would be delicious with butter icing halfway up. Lift the undersheet onto the top of the bed, like that. Now I'm going to attempt to do nice neat envelope corners, which I learnt in my Junior Red Cross a million years ago, like that. Tuck it under at the top as well. And there again, a nice neat corner, like that. So that the top of the bed is covered with an undersheet like that. Next I'm going to make a pillow. Take some of your leftover cake. You really don't need very much. I think use your bed as a guide. Cut it the right sort of width. But I'll make it a bit thinner or she'll be sitting up all night. Just try it for size. Yes, I think that'll be pretty good. So again, remove any crumbs. And roll out another scrap of sugar paste. Just about that much should be plenty to cover the pillow. I might use my little toy rolling pin. See how useful it is for these little bits. It does make it easier. That should be enough. Make the pillow sticky with the jam. And just sort of wrap it up in the little piece of icing. Press down the sides and trim them off with a knife. Now that looks quite like a pillow. Before it's dry, press down with your finger to make an indentation for the bear's head so that it looks as if the weight of her head is pushing down the pillow. You can even, if you like, mark a few creases with the back of a knife to look as if she's making the material crease where she's lying, like that. Put the pillow onto your bed, like that. You see, we're doing quite well. The next thing we need is Mummy's head. For her head, yet again, the wonderful sugar paste. You'll need about that much for her head, but I suggest you colour enough for all 3 bears at once so that you get the same colour. I've got some that I've coloured here. I've made it a nice yellow berry kind of colour. I suppose you could do brown bears, but I think the yellow looks quite pretty and jolly. So let's take enough for Mum's head, which will be about that much. Roll it in your palm, and then I just sort of make a snout like this. Remember, the back of her head really won't show because it'll be sunk into the pillow, so as long as you get a sort of snout effect at the front, and then maybe indent a little bit for her eyes like that, and she'll look quite bear-like. To make the ears, a little tiny scrap of sugar paste, roll it in your fingers, then dipping in icing sugar so that you don't stick, spread it out to a little ear shape, quite thin and delicate, and sort of curve it round like this to look like an ear. And with a little bit of water, just wet the bottom of it and stick it onto her head, you see, like that. I'll show you one that I did a little while before so that it's dry. There she is. Now she's got 2 ears, and I gave her a neck that can disappear under the cover. So the next step is to put Mummy's head onto the pillow. And we'll make a rough kind of body so that when we put the cover on, it doesn't look as if there's nobody in there. It looks as if there's a bit of a shape of a body lying asleep. And to do that, we'll use some more of our leftover cake. This really only needs to be a rough approximation of a body shape. So I suggest you do a long bit down like that to be her body, and perhaps 2 pieces like that to be her arms. Now, the next exciting bit is to cover that with a sugar paste cover. The easiest way to do this is to measure the cover, because otherwise you may find you've got one overwhelmingly big or not quite big enough. But you're probably getting quite good at guessing the amounts by now with all this work we've been doing. I think that sort of size will be just right to cover her and drape down onto the floor a little bit, which looks pretty. I'll knead it so it's lovely and smooth. Roll it out. You can roll it quite thin so that it's going to drape nicely. That looks as if it's going to be roughly big enough. I've picked up a tiny little crumb there, but that may well be parts that I can cut off. And anyway, I shall be painting it so that it won't show finally. With a tape measure, let's measure, now I'll try and be metric because I know I should, over the top of her body and allowing a little bit to drape on the floor each side. It's about 23 centimetres. So it's 23 centimetres wide, and again allowing it draping on the floor a little bit up to her neck is 14, so it's about 23 by 14. Let's see if we've got enough. Just about, we've got 23 that way. So I'll just trim that off so she has a nice neat cover. And 14 the other way. Oh yes, we've got plenty that way. Yes, I've cut off that crumb, that's good. A little bit of jam. At this stage, put it on your cake board, because once you've draped the material onto the floor, you don't really want to have to move it again. I'm not going to put it on the board because I'll show you the finished one in a minute, and they're already lying on the board. But it would be easier if you do. I don't think I need roll this up because it's quite a small quantity. Drape it over. Don't worry if you've got a little bit of a gap up the top by her neck, because we're going to cover that with a sheet. Now I'll show you how to make this go into nice folds with a paintbrush or even a small pencil. You see, if you stick the paintbrush in and sort of pinch it with your fingers, you can make nice little folds of material. Make some nice folds around this side. And I think just to make it look a bit more elegant, I'm going to round the corners of the bedspread a bit. I think it looks a little bit too big. That's better. And the same the other side. Now you see how we're getting there? We really are. It's beginning to look quite pretty. Let that dry, and then you can paint it. I've got one here that I did a short while ago, so that it should be nice and dry. You needn't leave it very long. The surface of the sugar paste dries really quite quickly. You can paint on it quite soon, you'll find. Here's one that's already dry. And I'll tuck that head in that we had. See, it's quite dry. Now, how are you going to paint it? You can really use your imagination. This is Mummy's bed, so I think I'll give her something floral. Give her some nice orangey flowers. If this painting seems a bit daunting, don't worry, you could always just colour the sugar paste, blue or green or whatever you like, and give her a plain cover. But it's great fun, this painting, because it's surprising how you can create effect really quite easily. So cover that with the flowers, and then I think a little leaf or two would help, with some green colouring. Just add a few leaves. And obviously for Daddy's bed and Baby's bed you could do different covers and make it look really sweet. When that's painted all over, the last thing we need is a little bit of sheet, just to pop over the top of the cover. With a little scrap of sugar paste, about that much. Just check for the width. It's actually about right in width. I'll trim it a bit. Fold it over. See how I'm just folding one edge of it? So it'll look as if it's a sheet that's actually coming from underneath the cover, and fold it over the top. Fold it like that. Just wet the top here so that it's going to stick. Like that. And stick the sheet. So she's nicely tucked in. Trim off each side. And all that remains is to give her a couple of little paws, which I think look rather sweet, peeping over the edge. With a couple more scraps of the coloured sugar paste, just model 2 little bent paws that will fit over the top of the sheet. Like that. And like that. Give her a nice face. I think she needs black for her nose and her mouth. Bears are something like this, aren't they? They have a sort of... I just think of a teddy bear. Copy a teddy bear if you've got one, that will make it easier. They have that sort of shape nose, don't they? And then a little line for the mouth, like that. That's quite bear-like. 2 little sleepy eyes. Like that. And then what I've done is put a little brown inside the ears. I haven't got a brown here. I'll use this reddish colour, which will just give you the idea. Just in there, I think makes it look a bit more teddy bear-like. If you make a little slip with a brush, like I did there, because I'm doing it upside down to show you, you'll find you can scrape it off with a knife. I'll show you in a minute. Last thing, some little claws. Like that. Let me show you with that little slip there. It's very useful to know this, so that if you do make a mistake, look, you can just scrape it off. So don't worry, because you can do lots of work and think, oh no, I've ruined it. But you haven't. There, that's scraped off. I'll just show you the finished cake to remind you what I did. I covered my board with the yellow sugar paste because otherwise it looked a bit ordinary. It looks much prettier if they've got a nice yellow carpet. And I did baby's paws slightly differently. See, I made his sticking up just so he looks a bit different from his mum and dad. And there we are. Now let's do a favourite children's character, Superman. And here I've made him burst out of the cake as if he's flying up from underneath the table, and I really think it looks quite dramatic. For this decoration you'll need a 5-egg sponge mixture baked in an 8.5-inch square cake tin, some sieved jam, 4 packets or 1 kilogram or 2 pounds of sugar paste, half a quantity of red royal icing, some food colourings, a shell nozzle and a nylon icing bag, about 3 pieces of thick florist's wire and a fine paintbrush. The first thing to do is to model your Superman out of sugar paste, and you will have to do this quite a time ahead because you need to let him dry ideally for a week or so until he's really quite hard. So try and remember to start this one about a week ahead. Take about that much of your sugar paste, which I suppose is about 1/4 pound, something like that, slightly more. And I'll start with the head, just the same as I did for the lady in the bath. Roll it in my hands, then make it into an oblong shape. Indent the eyes a little bit. I'm not going to give him a stuck-on button nose. I don't think that would look suitably macho for Superman. So I'll try and pinch a little nose for him, and perhaps slightly hollowed cheeks, like this. Then a body shape. I'm just going to make a big triangle really, so he looks good and muscly. So if you do it like this, imagine he's got big muscles in his shoulders. That'll be quite a good shape. But he'd benefit from a neck in between. So a tiny bit of icing. Little neck shape. Stick that like so. Now, because he's quite heavy, because he's solid icing, we'll need to support him on some more florist's wire. Going to use 2 pieces, I think, right through his body and up into his head. Do remember, please, when you serve this cake, make sure that the wires are taken out before somebody tries to eat Superman. Stick the wire right up through his body, up into his head. If you feel it come out, push it down a bit. I'll put another one to give him extra strength. If you manage to make him a couple of weeks ahead, you might not need the wire because he would dry very hard and solid, but it helps you to stick him in the cake and you just know that he is supported, so it's probably worth doing it. All he needs now are his arms. I'll show you the ones I've already modelled because I've let them dry. I've stuck one arm going downwards like that, but the other arm I've done separately on another piece of wire because I can push that in when it's really nice and dry. I've given him a fist as if he's punching his way up, flying out of the cake. So when that's nice and dry, the next thing to do is to paint him in good Superman colours. Try and find a picture of Superman in a comic book or somewhere so that you can copy his colours. He's mostly, of course, that lovely blue, but you have to leave his shape on his front for his big S. So paint him all over blue like that. Now we'll give him his red Superman S on his chest. Ideally you should wait for each stage of the painting to dry, but I'll go straight on just to show you. And when that red S is dry, of course, paint the yellow in between the red and the blue like he has. Give him a good expression. I think he should have nice black eyes. And some quite sort of quizzical, manly eyebrows. the worries of the world on his shoulders. Little red mouth. Again, sort of slightly set looking. Perhaps a couple of little nostrils. And if you colour a tiny scrap of sugar paste black with your black colouring, you could then give him some black hair. When that's all dry, roll out a little scrap of the red coloured sugar paste and cut out a little cloak, drape it round. Just the same way that we drape the covers over the three bears, just pick it up like material, drape it onto his back. And of course, paint his other arm blue as well. You can give him a flesh tint on his hand and on his face if you want to, if you think he's a bit white. I'll show you now how to make him fly out of the cake. We had our sponge, do you remember, that we've covered with sugar paste, not sticking it on the top. I've decorated mine with a bit of bright red royal icing to match Superman's cloak. I'll finish off this last side. It'd be easier for you if you do this half a day or so ahead so that it's dry when you're trying to fiddle to put Superman in the top. Now to make him fly out of the top, do you remember, it's not stuck in the middle. Cut some tears like this in the top. You must do this quite soon after you've iced it, as you can imagine, because if you leave it too long and this gets too dry, it won't work. It'll just crack when you try and pull it up. That should do. Don't make it too even, make it ragged tears. Lift up the cut pieces like this. All the way around the circle. See, this icing's quite thick, which makes it much easier to deal with. This would make a wonderful burst hoop, wouldn't it, for an animal to jump through in the circus. And now, I think we'll just cut a little hole in the middle of the cake to help him sink in a bit. I've just taken a little bit of cake out. The next step is to plunge him into the cake. My Superman is not quite dry, of course, as yours will be, so mine is a little bit delicate. But I'll just show you to give you the idea. Plunge him down like that, with the wires going right down into the cake. He's actually staying very well. But to make sure, if he seems a bit wobbly, get a little bit of royal icing. Just take a spoonful and put it down into the hole and press it round his waist. And that will dry quite hard. And make sure that he doesn't fall over. If you do that all the way round, it'll make him very strong. Now the other arm we need to put in, which of course is already on the florissoir. Stick it right down like that, so that it fits nicely onto his shoulder, like so. And then if you think it's still looking a little bit open round the hole, which I found mine was when I was doing it, you can add some extra little tears. I've got a couple here I'd already cut out. If you let them get really quite dry, then you can stick them up inside the hole. Mine aren't dried, so they're quite bendy. But if you leave them to dry for a while, you can stick lots of layers. If you want to get them to stand up even a bit more, which does look rather effective, I'll show you what we can do. Take a little bit of kitchen paper, or something similar, and just prop it up. If you support it like that until it's dry, then you can just take the paper away and it'll stick up beautifully, as if he's made lovely jagged tears in the floor. I'll show you the finished cake just to remind you what I mean. And once he's all painted up, he looks a little bit more dramatic. Here he is. You see, I added quite a few extra bits of tear to fill in the hole and to make it look more thrusting upwards. And it's all dry and it'll now stay there. And I think he looks as if he's really on his way to do some dramatic adventure. This is a very quick and easy and cheating way of doing what really amounts to one of those crinoline ladies that you see in the cake decorating books, which have a china figurine in the top and all the complicated piping all over the skirt. But this is just as pretty, and of course there's a doll for the birthday person to keep. And for this decoration, you'll need a 3-egg sponge mixture, coloured with a few drops of pink food colouring, baked in a 3-pint pudding basin. 1 quantity of pink butter icing, 1 small plastic doll, some sweets and sugar flowers, and a large flat biscuit. And here's the pink pudding basin cake. Cut a hole in the top of the cake, which will help our doll lady to push down into her skirt. And then the poor doll, now this is the one I'm using. You could use an old doll lying around the house, but give her a bit of a wash if she looks a bit past it. Or, very special, buy a new doll. And as I said in the introduction, of course, then the birthday person will have a doll to keep afterwards, which makes the cake even better. Now, the nasty part, you have to take her legs off, I'm afraid. And most dolls, you'll find they just pull off like this, like so. And do keep them in a safe place, or there might be tears before bedtime. And then I'm going to cover our cake with this lovely pink butter icing. Just the same as the beehive. Just spread it roughly over the cake. And this time you really needn't worry about getting it smooth at all, because you're going to cover it with so many sweets and flowers that you won't see what it's like underneath at all. When that's entirely covered with the butter icing, like this one here, take a little bit more and just put a bit on her bust, because we'll cover up her rude bits, as my boys would call it, with a couple of sugar flowers and give her a little flowered bodice, like that. Then push her into the cake. You could take her knickers off, but I've left them on just to keep this video clean. And then, this is such fun and so easy, you just stick flowers and sweets into the butter icing. If you do them in a line like this down the front, it's quite nice. It looks like a sort of apron skirt at the front there, like an olden days ball gown. And just cover it with little sweets and silver balls and whatever you can lay your hands on. You can do them in patterns, or you can just do it random. Whichever way you do it, it'll look lovely. I'll show you now how to make her hat. Find a nice big plain biscuit. Spread it with a bit more of the icing. Even a bit round the edge if you can, like that. And again, just press some pretty flowers into it, like that. And what I did earlier on was put some of these little silver balls around the edge. It just finishes it off. And when that's completely covered and you're happy with it, put a little bit of butter icing on the underneath. So you're going to have to wash the doll's hair afterwards, but it comes out very easily. Butter icing underneath, and arrange it at a nice jaunty angle. And just again to show you how she looks once she's finished, let's have a look at the finished one. And here she is. You see I've made a pretty pattern down the front, and I've put some large flowers on the top, and I really think she looks very elegant. These look so ridiculously like ice creams, it's hard to believe that they're cakes, but they really are, and they're so quick and easy to do. For this cake decoration, you'll need some donuts, 1 makes 2 cornets, some butter icing, and some ice cream cornets. This couldn't be simpler. Halve one of the donuts, Squeeze it gently into the top of one of the ice cream cornets till it fits nicely in. And then spread butter icing all over it. This idea came about because I was doing a rabbit cake for an Easter party, and I did the head of the rabbit with a donut spread with butter icing, because I was then going to put coconut on it to make it look like rabbit fur. And while I was spreading the donut with icing like this, my 4-year-old said, "Oh, Mummy, that looks like an ice cream." And so a cake was born. And I think it really does look very effective. Yeah, I'd smooth it out a bit. Be great fun for an outdoor party, this, because all the children would look as if they had ice creams and they were really little cakes. I'll join it up with these other ones over here, and you can see some of the variations that I've done. This looks like mint chocolate chip ice cream, and in fact that's just green colouring with a bit of peppermint essence to make it taste nice, and some chocolate sprinkles mixed in. The chocolate ice cream is made with a bit of cocoa powder added to the butter icing. The strawberry ice cream is pink colouring and again a bit of strawberry essence to make it taste nice. And the soft ice cream is just the same plain butter icing with a chocolate flake stuck in the top. Now I'm going to surprise you. A very fast, very silly cake. And for this decoration you'll need a flat sponge, a can of peach or apricot halves, and some whipped cream or aerosol cream. I found in the shop this ready-made flat round flan, which is perfect, but you can also use those flan cases that have the edge or one of those rectangular ones, anything similar to that. All you do is to cut 2 rectangular shapes, keeping of course the spare bits to make trifles as usual. Put them onto a plate. And I'm going to use this aerosol cream for speed, but if you make this any time ahead, use proper whipped cream because this disintegrates quite fast. Spray it over the sponges in that sort of a shape. Smooth it down a tiny bit with a wet knife. And then take 2 apricot or peach halves, squish them in the middle, and with the finishing touch, there you have eggs on toast. The Swiss roll is a very useful shape for making things. This would be a lovely cake for Christmas, for a first birthday party, or even for a confirmation. And for this cake decoration you'll need 1 plain Swiss roll, 1 packet or 250 grams or 8 ounces of sugar paste, some sieved jam, some long chocolate sticks, and some red and yellow food colouring. First of all, roll out the sugar paste. And you want to roll it to about the width of the Swiss roll and long enough to go right round it. So just do it roughly to start with, and then you can stop and have a bit of a measure and see if you're nearly the right size. Don't forget to keep dusting with the icing sugar to stop it sticking. That should be, I think, nearly the right size. I'm just going to check that I haven't got stuck anywhere. No, that's not stuck. Let's see how we're doing for size. Yes, it's a good width, and I think when I roll it up, it'll be long enough. Yes, it will. So trim one edge nice and straight. Measure the width and trim the other edge straight. Trim one end straight. Then, as usual, before we put the icing on, paint the cake with jam so that it's nice and sticky. You can just damp down the icing if you don't want to use jam. then it'll stick beautifully. Once it's all sticky, I'm just going to wipe my fingers, because if I roll it up with jammy fingers, I'm going to end up with jam on the outside of the cake, which would spoil it. You'll put the flat sort of underneath bit of the Swiss roll on one edge so that your join will end up on the flat bit of the Swiss roll, so that the nice smooth round front bit won't have a join on it. And when you get nearly round again, trim off the extra bit. And that's got our side nicely covered. Now to cover the top, I'm going to cut out a circle a bit bigger with sort of droopy bits that look as if the wax of the candle is dripping down. So yet again, I'll make sure I've got a nice clean surface without any jam. Make sure that's nice and smooth. Paint the top with jam, including the edges of the sugar paste. Don't worry if you go slightly over the edge, because the icing is going to go over the edge. Put that down onto the icing, and then cut this nice sort of drippy shape with your sharp knife, so that it'll then flop over the edges and look as if it's dripping down. Press it down like that. And then you can mould that as much as you want till it looks like really nice drips. And I'll show you on the finished one in a minute. I've made some extra drips out of sugar paste and just stuck them on so that it looks as if it's dripping right down the side. But I'll show you now how to do the flame. You'll need one of these long chocolate sticks. Changing over to my little toy rolling pin again. And cut out a nice flame shape, like that. And I need another one exactly the same, so I'll roll out another little scrap of icing. Put that on top, make sure I get it the same. Like that. Just tidy that little bit of jam off the edge. Now, just with my finger dipped in water, I'm damping down one piece of sugar paste. Put the chocolate stick onto it like that. Damp the stick a bit to make sure that we're going to stick all over, and put the other piece on top, like that. Then leave that somewhere to dry for a little while. It won't take very long, a couple of hours or so. And when that's dry, like this one is here, turn it over, because this will be the nicest side, the underneath. And with a little bit of nice flame colouring, paint it a lovely fiery orangey yellow. Do it both sides. And then, of course, all you have to do is push that down into the top of your cake. I'll show you again what it looks like when I've put on the extra drips. It really is rather effective. What would be very pretty, if you're using this for a confirmation or birthday or something, you could do a little group of candles, or one at each place, and they look lovely. I do hope you've enjoyed this video and that it's given you an idea of some of the different techniques you can use when you're decorating cakes. Now, don't feel bound by my ideas. Think up your own ideas, create your own effects, and your celebrations need never be boring again, and you can make some lucky person very happy.